Hi, my name is Naomi, and it is my great privilege to walk you through this virtual tour of the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints here in Wales. In 1839, 23-year-old Martha Thomas was baptised into the church in Manchester, having moved there from near Overton, Wales. The following year, missionaries Henry Royle and Frederick Cook were called and sent to teach Martha's friends and family near Cloy. Within a few weeks of visiting with Martha's parents, John and Elizabeth Thomas, they were baptised, as were many members of the Methodist congregation there, and the first branch in Wales was formed with 32 members. About this same time, William and Mary Henshaw embraced the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in Wolverhampton. Within 2 years, William was called to serve as a missionary in the industrial centre of South Wales. Though he spoke only English, on February 19, 1843, he baptised a bilingual tailor and his wife, William and Rachel Davies, as well as their entire family in Merthyr Tydfil. As they shared this gospel with their associates, other Welsh speakers began to come into the fold, and by the end of the year, South Wales had over 80 baptised members.
Hi, I'm Jules. By 1844, Welsh-speaking Latter-day Saints began emerging, who could confidently defend the Restoration in the popular religious debates of the day. Among antagonists to the Restoration was the gifted Abel Evans, who handily defeated his Latter-day Saint opponent in their first encounter, but who became more thoughtful and sincere during their second debate, as he realised the strength of the saint's position, and humbly asked if he could be baptised. Evans was then baptised by immersion, and within a week, his father and the rest of his family had followed his lead. Baptist minister Reverend W.R. Davis, who had previously referred to Abel Evans as an intelligent and gifted young man, was disappointed. He began categorising all converts to the new faith, including the gifted Evans, as the dregs of society, as fools, Satanists, and deceivers, and began printing outrageous falsehoods about the Latter-day Saints, stating such things as those receiving baptism at their hand must undress for them and go to the water stark naked. Such printed fabrications raised attention to the faith, but it also caused many sincere investigators to be ridiculed and abused, even losing employment. But such outcomes were not confined to Wales. They also occurred elsewhere. For instance, consider the case of Dan Jones.
Dan Jones was born here in Holcyn, North Wales in 1810. From his youth he loved the Lord, but could never settle upon a church he could fully embrace. At age 17 he began sailing the 7 seas in search of such a faith. 10 years later, after marrying Jane Melling, the two emigrated to America, where by 1842 he had become the ship's captain, transporting goods up and down the Mississippi River. Prevalent along this river were extravagant stories of the consummate villain Joe Smith and his poor dupes he induced to follow him. Dan Jones was disinterested until a remarkable letter written by Emma Smith, the wife of the ridiculed prophet, fell into his hands. This letter, he said, contained better counsel and a more pious spirit than anything he had ever read. He wondered how such abhorrent people could write such virtuous prose. They could not be both devil and saint. Finding believers amongst his Mississippi River clientele, he quizzed them on their beliefs and was surprised to find the very faith he had been seeking. He stepped back for a time, considering the effect embracing such a despicable name would have on his livelihood. In January 19, 1843, however, he proceeded and was baptised in the icy waters of the Mississippi. 3 months later, he unloaded his steamer at the Saints' Home in Nauvoo and met the prophet Joseph Smith for the first time.
Just 1 month later, a mission call was delivered to Dan Jones to preach the restored gospel in his native Wales. Dan was pleased by the call, but Joseph Smith asked him to delay his service for a time to assist the saints in Nauvoo. Over the next year, the Joneses became close friends and business partners with Joseph and Emma Smith, dividing their time living on the ship with living in the Smith home. Over a year later, in June 1844, when Joseph and Hiram Smith rode, calm as a summer's morning, to a scheduled trial in Carthage, Dan Jones was among those who accompanied them. Together they saw the blackened faces and heard the fiendish schemes of the drunken mob howling for their prey. It was an unforgettable sight. On the eve before the martyrdom, as Dan lay next to Joseph Smith on the jailhouse floor, Joseph uttered his final prophecy, which gave Dan courage. He now knew he would yet live to see Wales and would indeed fulfill his previously appointed mission there. This prophetic insight gave Dan the added strength he would need to get through the very difficult days that followed.
Dan Jones was sent on an errand the following morning and was still away when the martyrdom occurred. But within months, Dan and Jane Jones had fulfilled the prophecy as they once again set foot in Wales and began labouring near their area of birth. For the next 11 months, Dan Jones worked tirelessly but could only account for 3 baptisms. However, his testimony remained resolute. At an 1845 April conference in Manchester, Dan Jones spoke powerfully in defence of his people and especially his beloved friend, the prophet Joseph Smith.
I have had a personal acquaintance with that holy prophet for years, in public and in private. I have been with him while the mob raged for his innocent blood. In the dungeon of Carthage jail, I heard his testimony, until methought the cell the gate of paradise. I have known him, yes, and slept on his pure bosom the last night he lived in this mean world. I have heard him preach to and pray for the spirits that thrusted their bayonets through the iron bars to try to take his life in the meantime. Was he a bad man? Oh no. All the host of heaven say no. All the exalted of the earth join in the chorus. Hitherto the prophecy of our worthy and departed prophet on my head has been fulfilled. Thank heaven for such a testimony. 'Tis enough to condemn this whole nation, and I know it. Hence 7 woes hang over my head, if I make not the right use of it.
8 months later, Dan Jones was reassigned to labour in South Wales as church president over all of Wales, relocating to Merthyr Tydfil.
With the added legitimacy a Welsh-speaking church leader brought to Wales, the negative press became even more vigilant in printing misrepresentations against the growing faith. Having experienced in America the damage a deceitful press can wield, Dan Jones could not stand idly by. He'd fired back a lengthy rebuttal, but without anyone willing to print it, he resolved to lease the press, owned by his younger brother, the congregational minister here in Rydebont, and print it himself. Dan Jones, assisted by his brother's typesetter, John Davis, aggressively printed rebuttals to the false assertions of others, printing 17 such pamphlets during his first mission here. Within 2 months, typesetter John Davis was converted through these pamphlets, and conversions of others followed. The two also published a Welsh hymnal and monthly Welsh periodical, Prophoi de Jubilee, or The Prophet of the Jubilee.
Those who were converted readily shared its precepts with others, often making the coal mines and ironworks and farms of South Wales cathedrals where the word of God was freely shared. Soon upwards of 1,000 new converts were embracing the faith and being baptised each year. Adding to these conversions in the south, Dan Jones assigned the very capable Abel Evans to take this message up north, where conversions had also begun occurring. Evans served faithfully for 6 years as a missionary throughout Wales.
There were 2 purposes to the preaching of these early missionaries. One was to bring the restored gospel of Jesus Christ to a world that desperately needed it. But the second goal in the 1800s was to encourage those who accepted this gospel to emigrate to America, to help build up the centre place of Zion, and to bolster their collective faith as a people. With persecution mounting throughout Wales, it was not difficult to persuade new converts to emigrate, if they could just find the means to do so.
Dan Jones completed his first mission in early 1849, having seen church membership grow to over 3,600. Nearly 250 Welsh saints accompanied Dan and Jane to America aboard the ship the Buena Vista, including John Parry Sr. and his wife Mary. John had been a highly respected Campbellite minister and was no less successful as a Latter-day Saint. Being greatly accomplished as a musician as well, John enables comforting melodies to flow from the Welsh countrymen, which calmed many co-travellers headed to Zion. Being informed in Utah of the uplift that the Welsh voices brought the weary travellers, Brigham Young asked John to lead them again in singing for the 1849 October General Conference for the Church. This group formed the nucleus for what would eventually become the famed Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square. Though his parents left Wales in the 1849 company, John Parry Jr. was asked to remain longer, where he assisted Abel Evans in introducing the gospel to many in North Wales. Fellow stonemason Elias Morris, who worked with John at this lighthouse at Point of Ayr, accepted the gospel and was baptised here. He then helped teach the gospel to others, including the keeper of this lighthouse. This location became a popular secluded spot where many baptisms would follow at the tidal pools at its base. John Parry and Elias Morris also helped with the construction of the Latter-day Saint Chapel in Abergele, the second purpose-built chapel in Wales, completed in 1849, shortly after the one in Llanelli. This still stands there today as part of the Bull Hotel.
When Dan Jones departed Wales, typesetter John Davis took over the printing needs of the church for the next 5 years. In addition to continuing the regular periodical, which was renamed Eithgon Sion, or Zion's Trumpet, he found time with his wife Elizabeth and their friend Mary Dear to translate, as well as publish the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price in Welsh. He followed those with Llyfr Mormon, or the Book of Mormon in Welsh.
Dan Jones returned to Wales in late 1852 for a second mission here, grateful to now have use of Llyfr Mormon. Another 2,000 Welsh joined the church during his second mission here. In 1854, Dan Jones took control of the church press again so that John Davis and his wife could immigrate. Jones then printed another 21 Welsh pamphlets to further promote the principles of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. When he returned to Utah in 1856, another 560 Welsh immigrants accompanied him, including John Parry Jr.
Abel Evans served 2 missions in Wales as well, but a severe cold during his second mission took his life in Merthyr Tydfil in 1866. His headstone here in Cefn Coed Cemetery, just outside Merthyr Tydfil, is one of few in Wales that has the title of Elder inscribed as a tribute to his dedicated service. I am so grateful for these early missionaries and for the faith they so devoutly represented here. Because of their unconquerable spirit and love for Jesus Christ and his restored gospel, I too am a member today. And I'm grateful for their sacrifices so that I could know the gospel. And I hope that you can as well. Thank you for your time.
I too am grateful for my Welsh heritage and for my faith in this restored gospel of Jesus Christ. It has brought such peace and happiness into my life. Many of you watching will already be members of this faith, but if not and you would like to know more, then a chat link is available on the page below. Thank you so much for your time and attention to this virtual tour. May the Lord be ever with you and bless you in your efforts to follow him.